Season 8's Brian and Stewie can be best described as Seth McFarlane talking to himself for 25 minutes straight, because the entire episode takes place in just one room, has no cutaways, and purely focuses on just two characters.
You're my only friend, Brian. If I didn't have you, I'd be lost.
You'd be okay.
No, I wouldn't.
It is one of the best episodes that Family Guy has ever done, but falls just a bit short of perfection. So let's get into why this episode works and what's holding it back from true greatness. The episode doesn't open with the usual bright and colourful song and dance number, but instead just the logo on a black screen. In the original TV broadcast, Brian and Stewie would step out and introduce this episode to us, but this intro has since been removed in every single TV airing after this, as well as Hulu, Disney Plus, and the DVD release, and personally, I think it does work a lot better without it. And speaking of no musical moment, there is no orchestral score in this episode, like, at all. In case you didn't know, Family Guy uses a 35 to 40 piece live orchestra for every episode. So the lack of intro and background music tells us straight away that this episode will be much different from the ones we've seen before. So the story opens in a bank vault where Brian is looking through his safety deposit box, a box that includes, amongst other things, a bird.
What are you going to do with that?
I was gonna take it home, show it to Lois, make her proud of me.
But Stewie's in a hurry because he has to return a $3,000 jumper to Tom Brown.
Where'd you even get that kind of money? None of your damn business, that's where.
What I absolutely love about this episode is Brian and Stewie's banter. It's so effortless and so funny, which makes it so easy to forget that both of these characters are performed by the same person.
Brian, a pie tastes better with Cool Whip.
What?
I said a pie tastes better with Cool Whip.
Cool whip?
Anyway, just when Stewie's about to leave, the vault door closes, trapping them inside. The premise of this episode was inspired by an episode of All in the Family, where Archie Bunker manages to get locked inside a cellar. Producer Cara Vallo and Seth MacFarlane were big fans of the episode, and so wanted to do something very similar. In the TV biz, this kind of episode is called a bottle episode, where everything takes place in just one setting. A type of episode that is done to usually save on cost if a season has gone over budget.
I'm doing a bottle episode.
But in this case, I don't think that they did this because of their lack of money, but rather tell a story like a one-act stage play. It's something we have seen in a few movies like The Breakfast Club, The Hateful Eight, and 12 Angry Men, all with their own genres and agendas for putting these characters together. And like Family Guy, overall it makes us understand these characters a bit more without the distractions of the outside world. And to create a sense of claustrophobia, there is no B-plot or any cutaways. Therefore, we are trapped inside the vault with them. And because they are stuck in this tiny room together, it allows them to drop their walls and be vulnerable with each other in a way we haven't really seen Family Guy do very often. Which brings me to something that I might have to give a bit of a trigger warning for here, because I'm going to talk about a sensitive topic and specifically a word that I can't say on YouTube, otherwise they will do everything and anything to stop this video being seen by slapping it with age restrictions. Honestly, it absolutely sucks that YouTube refuses to allow us to have open discussions about this topic. YouTube censorship is out of control, but we've got to play by the rules a bit. So yeah, Brian admits that he keeps a gun in the safety deposit box just in case he wants to end it all, and says it's actually comforting to know it's there just in case everything becomes a bit too much. And Stewie, he's shocked about this and calls him selfish.
How is that selfish?
What would I do if you weren't here? You're the only one who makes my life bearable.
It's here when Stewie tells Brian how much he cares for him that I feel myself tearing up every time.
I mean, I love you as one loves another person whom one simply cannot do without.
It just works so well because the subject matter is taken very seriously for once. There are no dumb jokes, no cutaway gags, plus it's insane how these lines sound so authentic despite them coming from a cartoon dog and a cartoon baby.
You give my life purpose, and maybe that's enough.
Whenever Family Guy tries to have emotional moments nowadays, it's always the same. Sad music plays, the characters tilt their head, a slow zoom, and they hug. Literally, every single time. But here, there's no sappy music playing, and overall, it doesn't feel forced. Yes, Family Guy can be loud, dumb, and offensive, and for that reason I feel a lot of people overlook it, but it can also have these deep emotional and sweet character moments too. This episode also had one of my favourite ever endings in the show, in that it didn't just end with the usual dumb joke. Instead, it finishes with Brian reading David Copperfield, a book that touches on the themes of the word that I couldn't say before out loud. Seriously, YouTube's rules are crazy. Brian then wakes up to the door opening before silently carrying Stewie out of the vault in such a caring way. And the credits don't even have any music playing over them. It's kind of ironic that in a show called Family Guy, it's the Brian and Stewie episodes that are usually the best ones. Like the Road 2 series and of course this one. I really do believe that these two are not just best friends, but they are also family. And as much as they might fight, they just can't live without one another. When this episode was made, it was around the same time when Seth stopped writing for the show and instead focused only on voiceover.
Because I haven't written on the show since like 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, whenever I started doing Ted.
Meaning that this was probably one of the last episodes he was creatively involved in. Which totally lines up because season 8 was right at the precipice of Brian being a total douchebag. Brian was the one character in Family Guy that was most like Seth McFarlane. He was basically his fursona. He put a lot of himself in the dog. They're atheists, they both smoke pot, they both love live, big swing bands. Hell, Seth doesn't even change his voice that much when he voices him.
I'll bark like a seal for you. I do Peter,
I do Stewie,
I do Brian,
and I do Quagmire.
And so when Seth stepped away, I don't think it was a coincidence that Brian's character went very downhill. But if you want to know a bit more about this, then I did an entire video on how Family Guy failed Brian. And I'll put that down in the description below if you're interested. So Brian in this episode was in that halfway sweet spot, where he was still kind of the intelligent character from the earlier seasons, but also had a bit of that douchebaggery that was creeping in more. But that's not to say that this entire episode is very serious, because it's really not. It's actually really funny, like when Stewie uses his dying phone not to call for help, but rather to call Tom Brown's customer service.
You wasted the one phone call we had to return a sweater? A $3,000 sweater, which I am now stuck with.
These jokes worked so well because the characters play so well against each other.
It's the one time I ever splurged on myself, and you have to go and make me feel foolish. Look, I didn't...
Save it, okay?
But aside from all of these many positives, there are just a few things that stop it being, well, a perfect episode. And it's mostly when Stewie poops in his diaper and asks Brian to eat it. Now, the bit leading up to the actual event is kind of funny just because Seth performs it so well.
Eat it.
What?
Eat it, Brian.
You're out of your mind.
But the moment where Brian starts licking it up, causing Stewie to throw up, which Brian then eats too, it's just way too much. It just felt unnecessary. The episode was already funny enough with Brian and Stewie's natural banter, not to mention the great sentimental moments between them later on. And I know that Family Guy has always done the gross out humour and sometimes it works, but for me, it just didn't fit very well in this stripped back episode. It's honestly as if the writers weren't quite confident enough that their sentimental bottle episode would satisfy their usual audience, so they threw in this gross out joke in there just in case. I also think that it was this particular joke that stopped this episode from winning awards like an Emmy. But of course, that's just speculation on my part. I just feel like if you removed those gross scenes entirely, it would have gone down a whole lot better with general audiences. But unfortunately, the first 8 minutes of this episode is mostly dedicated to the discussing of and the eating of poop. But as soon as that's done, the episode flips and the two start drinking together using the bottle that Brian saved for his final drink ever. This causes them to get drunk, lose their inhibition. Stewie asks Brian to pierce his ear, which, although is a mostly unnecessary blood scene, it was still actually very funny.
I wish we had a mirror, because I actually did a really good job.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I'm not worried.
But like, imagine watching this episode for the first time, seeing that first bit, put off by it, and therefore turn over before seeing the rest. You'd be missing out on such an iconic episode that might actually appeal to a wider audience. But without all that, it still goes to show that without the distracting cutaways, the Meg bashing, and the fart jokes, we get one of the most intimate episodes that the show has ever done. It's a great character study, and I just wish we got a bit more of these episodes from Family Guy. It would be so awesome to see this kind of formula but with other characters that we don't really see isolated and intimate. But do you guys think it still works with the diaper jokes, and are there any particular episodes that you'd consider perfect, or almost perfect? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you'd like to simply show some love for the channel, then please give this video a like. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.